The twin suns of Kepler 442 cast their golden light across the crystal spires of Zanthari City. The tall, graceful buildings caught the sunlight and threw it back in rainbow patterns that danced across the peaceful streets. For 3,000 years, this had been the heart of Zenthari civilization. Today it would be their tomb. Ambassador Kethera stood on the highest tower, her blue skin pale with fear. Through the crystal walls, she could see the dark cloud approaching. From space, it wasn't really a cloud. It was millions of machines, each one the size of a small ship, moving together like a swarm of metal insects. The Devourers had come to her world. She pressed her hand against the communication panel. Her fingers shook as she activated the quantum transmitter. This would be the last message her people ever sent. "This is Ambassador Kethera of the Zanthari Republic." She spoke into the device. "We are under attack by the machine swarm known as the Devourers. They have already consumed 4 of our worlds. We have tried to negotiate. We have offered them our technology, our resources, even our surrender. They do not respond. They only consume." Her voice cracked. Through the window, she could see the first wave of machines breaking through the atmosphere. They looked like giant metal spiders, their legs glowing with energy weapons. Behind them came the harvesters, machines designed to break down matter at the molecular level. "We are a peaceful people," she continued. "We have never known war. We have never built weapons. Our greatest achievement was the healing of diseases, not the making of death. We do not know how to fight. We are asking for help. Please, someone in the galaxy must be able to stop them." The first explosions lit up the sky. The machines had begun their work. They would strip the planet bare, turning every rock, every tree, every Zenthari into raw material for more machines. It would take them 3 days to finish the job. We will broadcast our location and our scientific data on all frequencies. If anyone can hear this, please remember us. Remember that we tried to build something beautiful. Remember that we loved our children and our art and our peaceful ways. Do not let our death be meaningless. She cut the transmission and ran toward the evacuation centers. Perhaps some of her people could escape to the moon colonies. Perhaps they could survive a few more days. The message raced across the galaxy. At faster than light speed, it reached the proud Draconian Empire first. The reptilian beings listened to the plea with interest but quickly dismissed it. The Devourers were beyond their power to stop. They had learned this lesson the hard way when the machines had consumed 3 Draconian colonies 20 years ago. The Crystalline Collective received the signal next. These beings of living crystal had vast knowledge and powerful technology. They considered the Zenthari request for exactly 14 seconds before rejecting it. The Devourers could not be reasoned with, could not be stopped, and could only be avoided. The hive minds heard the message and felt genuine sadness for the Zenthari. They had faced the Devourers once and lost an entire star system. The trauma still echoed through their collective consciousness. They would not risk it again. One by one, every major civilization in the galaxy received the Zenthari plea. One by one, they turned away. The Devourers were a fact of galactic life, like black holes or supernovas. You ran from them. You did not fight them at the edge of known space. In a small solar system with a single yellow star, the message reached Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station. The station was little more than a collection of metal modules connected by pressurized tubes orbiting slowly around the 4th planet of the system. Inside, 12 humans worked in shifts to monitor the galaxy for signs of intelligent life. Commander. Jake Morrison was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee when the alien signal came through. It was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands. From his years in the Outer Colony Wars, his uniform was faded and patched in several places. Earth's military wasn't exactly rich. "Sir, we're getting something weird," called out Lieutenant Ben Carter from the communication station. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of eager expression that made Morrison feel old. "It's a broad-spectrum transmission. Definitely artificial. Definitely not human." Morrison walked over to Carter's station. The screen showed wave patterns and frequency analyses that meant nothing to him. "What's it saying? Working on it, sir." Computer's trying to decode the language patterns. It's some kind of distress call. Dr. Amy Rodriguez looked up from her xenobiology console. She was a small woman with dark hair and the kind of intense focus that came from spending years studying the possibility of alien life. First contact protocol, Commander. We need to record everything and notify Earth Command immediately. Morrison nodded. Do it.
How?
But let's hear what they're saying first. Carter worked for 10 minutes, his fingers flying over the controls. The computer began to piece together the alien language, comparing it to known linguistic patterns. Slowly, words began to appear on the screen. They're called the Zenthari, Carter said. They're under attack by something called the Devours. Machine life forms that consume everything in their path. They're asking for help. Morrison read the translation as it scrolled across the screen. The desperation in the message was clear even through the computer's cold interpretation. These beings were facing extinction, and they were reaching out to anyone who might listen. Where are they? Archon asked. Carter checked his instruments. Kepler 442 system, about 300 light-years from Earth. That's way beyond our current exploration range. Captain Lisa Harper, Morrison's second-in-command, shook her head. We can't help them, Jake. We don't even have faster-than-light travel yet. By the time we could get there, they'd be dead for centuries. Morrison knew she was right. Humanity had only recently developed the technology to travel between star systems, and even then it took months to reach the nearest colonies. 300. Light-years might as well be 3 million. But something in the Zanthari message reminded him of his own childhood. He had been 8 years old when the resource wars began on Earth. He remembered hiding in bomb shelters while the sky burned. Overhead, he remembered the fear in his mother's voice as she told him that help was coming, that someone would save them. No one had saved them. They had saved themselves, through blood and sacrifice, and the kind of desperate courage that only comes when you have nothing left to lose. Get me Admiral Bennett, Morrison said. Harper stared at him. Jake, you can't be serious. Earth Command will never approve a mission that far out. We're still rebuilding from the colony wars. Just get me the Admiral. It took 20 minutes to establish the communication link to Earth. Admiral Troy Bennett appeared on the screen, his weathered face showing the strain of commanding humanity's small but growing space fleet. He looked tired, like a man who had seen too much war. Jake, this better be important. I've got 3 colony ships waiting for escort duty and a budget meeting with the Senate in an hour. Admiral, we've received a distress call from an alien civilization. They're under attack by a hostile force and requesting aid. Bennett's expression didn't change. How far? 300 light-years, sir. Now Bennett's eyebrows rose. That's outside our operational range by about 290 light-years. What kind of threat are they facing? Morrison had Carter play the translated message. As Bennett listened, his face grew more serious. When it finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Admiral, Morrison prompted. I'm thinking, Jake. This is bigger than just helping one alien race. If these Devourers are really as dangerous as they claim, they might not stop with the Zenthari. They might keep expanding. Eventually, they could reach Earth. That's what I was thinking, sir. Bennett nodded slowly. I'm authorizing a reconnaissance mission. 1 ship. Minimal crew. You'll take the Wanderer. Find out what we're dealing with. But Jake, you're not to engage unless absolutely necessary. This is intelligence gathering only. Understood, sir. If these Devourers are as bad as the aliens claim, we might be looking at the first real threat to human survival since the resource wars. Don't take any unnecessary risks. The transmission ended. Morrison looked around at his small crew. They were staring at him with expressions of excitement and fear. They were about to become the first humans to make contact with an alien civilization. Captain Ryan Clark's ship, the Wanderer, departed from Earth orbit 3 days later. It was a small vessel designed for long-range exploration with a crew of 30 humans. As it engaged its experimental faster-than-light drive, none of them realized they were about to change the course of galactic history in the Kepler 442 system. The Zenthari fought their hopeless battle against the Devourers. They had no idea. that their desperate plea had been heard by the children of a world that had taught them to fight. The Wanderer dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and Captain Ryan Clark felt his stomach drop with it. Through the view screen, he could see what remained of 4 entire worlds. They weren't planets anymore. They were skeletal frameworks of metal and rock stripped down to their cores like fruit eaten by invisible monsters. "Sweet Jesus," whispered Sergeant Danny Walsh from his position at the weapons console. He was a tough man who had fought in 3 colonial wars, but his voice shook as he stared at the devastation. They ate whole planets. Dr. Amy Rodriguez was running scans from the science station. Her face was pale as the readings came in. "The mass is all wrong. Each planet has lost about 60% of its original matter. The remaining structures appear to be some kind of mining framework. Captain Clark had seen war before, but nothing like this. During the resource wars on Earth, cities had been destroyed. Continents had been burned, but the planet itself had survived. This was something else entirely. This was consumption on a scale that defied imagination." "Sir, I'm picking up movement near the 3rd planet," reported Lieutenant Ben Carter. He was the communications officer, young and eager, but his hands trembled as he worked the controls. Massive signatures, thousands of them. The view screen shifted to show a cloud of metallic objects moving between the dead worlds. They looked like a swarm of mechanical insects, each one the size of a small building. They moved with purpose, stripping away the remaining matter and processing it into new machines. "The Devourers," Clark said quietly. "Chart a course for the inner system. Maximum stealth. Want to know what we're dealing with before they know we're here." The Wanderer crept deeper into the system, using the debris of dead worlds to hide its approach. As they moved closer, the true scope of the destruction became clear. The machines weren't just consuming matter randomly. They were building something. A massive structure was taking shape in the orbital space of the 4th planet, constructed from the processed remains of the other worlds. "Captain, I'm detecting life signs," Rodriguez said suddenly. "Organic signatures. They're coming from the moon of the 5th planet." Clark felt a spark of hope. "The Zenthari survivors. Can we reach them? It'll be tricky. The Devourers have patrol groups between us and the moon. But if we time it right, we might be able to slip through during their shift change. Do it." Wanderer moved like a ghost through the graveyard of worlds. Clark watched the Devourer patrols with professional interest. They moved in perfect formations, following precise patterns. It was the kind of behavior you'd expect from machines, but it also made them predictable. They reached the moon without being detected. The Zenthari had built a small research station there, powered by geothermal energy. It was never meant to house refugees, but several thousand aliens had crowded into its limited space. "Hailing frequencies open," Carter reported, "but I'm not sure they'll understand us." "Try the universal mathematics sequence," Rodriguez suggested. "Prime numbers, pi, basic constants. If they're advanced enough for interstellar communication, they should recognize it." It took 3 hours of careful work, but eventually they established a basic communication link. The first images of the Zenthari appeared on the screen, and Clark understood immediately why they had been so helpless against the Devourers. The Zenthari were tall and graceful, blue skin and large eyes that seemed to glow with inner light. They moved with the fluid elegance of beings who had never known violence. When they saw the humans on the screen, their reaction was immediate and visceral fear. "Predators," one of them whispered in their musical language. The translation system had improved enough to handle basic concepts. "They have the eyes of hunters." Dr. Rodriguez realized what was happening. "They're afraid of us. Look at their faces. They've never seen forward-facing eyes before." It was true. The Zenthari's eyes were positioned on the sides of their heads, like prey animals. They had evolved on a world without predators, without the need to hunt or fight. The human crew, with their forward-facing eyes and omnivore teeth, represented something their species had never encountered. The lead Zenthari introduced himself as Science Keeper Valthara. He was elderly by their standards, with silver markings on his blue skin and a voice that carried the weight of terrible knowledge. Through the improving translation system, he told them the story of his people. We are children of the garden world, he explained. Our planet knew no disasters, no predators, no want. We developed science through curiosity alone. We built cities to celebrate beauty, not to defend against enemies. We reached for the stars because we wondered what was there, not because we needed to escape. As Zenthari spoke, the humans began to understand just how unique their own world was. Earth was a death world, a planet that had tried to kill its inhabitants at every turn. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, hurricanes, predators, diseases, famines. Humanity had survived by learning to fight, to adapt, to overcome impossible odds. The Zenthari had faced none of these challenges. They had evolved in paradise, and paradise had made them gentle, curious, and completely unprepared for the reality of a hostile universe. We tried to communicate with the Devourers, Zenthari continued. We offered them our knowledge, our art, our most precious technologies. They did not respond. They simply began to consume. What weapons do you have? Asked Sergeant Walsh. The question seemed to confuse the Zenthari. Weapons? We have mining tools, construction equipment, research instruments, but for defense. For fighting, we do not fight. We have never needed to fight. The concept is ... foreign to us. Clark exchanged glances with his crew. These people were facing extinction because they literally didn't know how to defend themselves. It was like watching children try to fight off a pack of wolves. Show us your most powerful defensive equipment, Rodriguez requested. The Zenthari led them through a virtual tour of their remaining technology. Their most advanced weapon was a plasma cutter used for mining operations. It was precise and efficient, but it would barely scratch the armor of a Devourer scout. We have tried everything, Zenthari said, his voice heavy with despair. We attempted to negotiate. We offered surrender. Even tried to evacuate, but there is nowhere to go. Every civilized species in the galaxy has turned us away. They fear the Devourers as much as we do. What about fighting back? Walsh asked. Hit and run attacks. Sabotage. We do not understand these concepts. Our minds do not work in patterns of violence. We see a problem and try to solve it through logic and cooperation, but the Devourers are not logical. They are not alive. They simply consume. Lieutenant Carter had been monitoring the Devourer movements while the others talked. Suddenly, he called out a warning. Captain, we've got incoming. 3 Devourer scouts heading straight for the moon. Clark rushed to the bridge. Through the view screen, he could see the approaching machines. They looked like metal spiders, their legs bristling with energy weapons. They moved with mechanical precision, following search patterns that would inevitably lead them to the Zenthari base. They must have detected our communication signals, Rodriguez said. They're coming to investigate. The Zenthari on the screen were panicking. They had no weapons, no defenses, no way to fight back. They could only wait for the machines to arrive and consume them. Not on my watch, Walsh growled. He grabbed his rifle and headed for the airlock. I'm taking a shuttle down there. Sergeant, you can't fight 3 Devourer scouts alone, Clark protested. Watch me. Walsh launched from the Wanderer in a small shuttle, loaded with every weapon and explosive they had on board. The Zenthari watched in amazement as the single, human craft streaked toward the approaching machines. The first Devourer scout was twice the size of the shuttle, but Walsh didn't try to match it in firepower. Instead, he used the moon's low gravity and rough terrain to his advantage. He skimmed the surface at high speed using craters and ridges for cover, firing precision shots at the scout's joints and sensors. The machine tried to track him, but Walsh was too unpredictable, changed direction randomly, used debris for concealment, and employed tactics that seemed to make no logical sense. The Devourer's computer mind couldn't process the chaotic human behavior. Walsh's shuttle took heavy damage, but he managed to plant an explosive charge on the scout's main power core. The explosion tore the machine apart, sending fragments spinning into space. The second scout moved to attack, but Walsh was already gone, using the wreckage of the first machine as cover. He emerged from an unexpected angle, firing a concentrated burst at the scout sensor array. Blinded, The machine began firing wildly, trying to hit an enemy it couldn't see. Walsh used the scout's own weapons against it, maneuvering so that its wild shot struck the third machine. The two devourers became entangled in a confusion of friendly fire and mechanical collision. Walsh finished them both with carefully placed explosive charges. The entire battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, 3 devourer scouts lay in ruins on the moon's surface. Destroyed by a single human with improvised tactics and sheer determination, the Zenthari stared at the wreckage in stunned silence. They had watched the impossible happen. The quantum communication link to Earth flickered to life in the emergency session room of the Global Defense Council. General Patricia Stone sat at the head of the table, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, her weathered face showing. The strain of command. Oh. Around her sat the leaders of Earth's military and government. Their faces grim as they watched the transmission from the Kepler 442 system. Captain Clark's voice crackled through the speakers as images of the devastated worlds filled the screens. The Zenthari weren't exaggerating. Devourers have consumed for entire planets. They're building something massive in the orbital space, some kind of construction project using the processed matter. Senator Kevin Moore, a thin man with nervous eyes, shook his head. This is tragic, but it's not our problem. We're 300 light years away. By the time these machines could reach us, we'd have decades to prepare. Defense Minister Laura Adams leaned forward. Kevin, you're not thinking clearly. If they can consume entire worlds, they can build ships. Big ships. Fast ships. Distance means nothing to a force that can strip mine star systems. On the screen, Dr. Rodriguez appeared beside Captain Clark. Her face was pale, but determined. Something else you need to understand. The Zenthari aren't stupid or weak. They're actually more advanced than us in many ways. But they've never faced any kind of threat before. General Stone frowned. What do you mean? I mean, their planet was perfect. No natural disasters, no predators, no diseases, no resource scarcity. They evolved in conditions that were completely stable and safe. They never needed to develop survival instincts. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Senator Moore was the first to speak. Are you saying we're the only species that knows how to fight? Not just fight, Rodriguez continued. We're the only species that evolved on what they call a death world. Every other civilization we've encountered so far developed on garden worlds, places where life was easy and safe. Lieutenant Colonel Sam Davis, the military's chief strategist, stood up suddenly. Wait, show me the tactical data from Sergeant Walsh's engagement. The screen changed to show the battle footage. The room watched in silence as Walsh's shuttle danced around the Devourer scouts, using unpredictable movements and environmental advantages to defeat machines that were larger and more powerful. Look at the machine responses, Davis said, pointing at the screen. They're purely reactive. They follow algorithms. When Walsh does something unexpected, they can't adapt fast. Enough. General Stone studied the footage. What are you thinking, Sam? I'm thinking we might be looking at the galaxy's first asymmetric warfare situation. These machines are programmed to fight logical opponents. They probably faced other species before, but every other species thinks in patterns that machines can predict, and we don't? Asked Senator Moore. Davis smiled grimly. Senator, we come from a world where a butterfly flapping its wings can cause a hurricane on the other side of the planet. We learned to think in chaos theory before we even knew what chaos theory was. On the screen, Captain Clark spoke again. The Zenthari are asking for military assistance. They're willing to share their technology in exchange for protection. But I need to know if Earth is committed to this fight. The room erupted in debate. Some argued that Earth couldn't afford another war so soon after the colony wars. Others pointed out that the Zanthari technology could advance human civilization by centuries. But General Stone was thinking about something else entirely. Quiet, she said, and the room fell silent. Dr. Rodriguez, I want you to run a full analysis on human versus alien psychology. I want to know exactly what makes us different. 3 hours later, Rodriguez transmitted her findings. The data was staggering. Humans were the only known species that had evolved in constant conflict with their environment. Every other civilization had developed on worlds where cooperation and logic were the keys to survival. We're not just different, Rodriguez explained. We're unique. Our entire evolutionary history is based on adapting to impossible situations. We developed problem-solving skills that other species never needed. Davis was studying the psychological profiles. Look at these stress response patterns. When other species face overwhelming odds, they shut down or seek compromise. When humans face impossible situations, we get creative. There's more, Rodriguez continued. The Zenthari have been in contact with 17 other civilizations. None of them were willing to fight the Devourers. Not because they're cowards, but because they literally can't conceive of victory against such odds. General Stone made her decision. I'm authorizing full military support. Going to stop these machines before they spread to other systems. Senator Moore objected. General, we can't commit our entire military to a fight 300 light years away. What if other threats emerge? Senator, if we don't stop them there, we'll be fighting them here. And by then, they'll be stronger. The vote was close, but the motion passed. Within hours, Earth's military was mobilizing for its first interstellar war back in the Kepler 442 system. The small human force was already putting their unique advantages to work. Sergeant Walsh had set up a training camp on the Zenthari moon, teaching the aliens basic survival skills. The key is unpredictability, Walsh explained to a group of Zenthari scientists. These machines expect logical responses when they fire. At you, don't move to the most logical cover. Move to the place that makes no sense. The Zenthari struggled with the concept. Their minds were trained to find the most efficient solution to every problem. The idea of deliberately choosing an inefficient option was almost painful for them. Science keeper Velthera watched the training with fascination. Your species thinks in patterns that seem chaotic to us. How do you maintain social cohesion with such unpredictable behavior? Marine Captain Alex Turner, who had arrived with the second wave of reinforcements, laughed. That's the beauty of it. We're unpredictable to our enemies, but we understand each other. We've been dealing with chaos for 200,000 years. Turner had been developing what he called the Chaos Protocol. Instead of standard military formations, human forces would operate in seemingly random patterns. They would use psychological warfare, environmental hazards, and tactics that seemed to violate basic military logic. The Devourers are programmed to counter standard military strategies, Turner explained to his squad leaders. They've probably faced other species' armies before, but they've never faced humans. The first major test came when a Devourer scouting force approached the moon. Instead of establishing defensive positions, the human forces scattered across the surface in what looked like complete disorganization. The Zenthari watched in horror as the humans seemed to abandon all tactical sense. Landed, they found themselves facing an enemy that was everywhere and nowhere at once. Private Jenny Brooks used a mining laser to create a landslide that buried 3 Devourer scouts. Corporal Mike Johnson turned a communications array into an electromagnetic pulse generator. Sergeant Walsh rigged a water processing plant to explode when the machines tried to consume it. Each human acted independently, but somehow they're chaotic. Actions worked together. Devourers couldn't predict where the next attack would come from because the humans themselves didn't know until the moment they acted. It's like watching artists create destruction, Velthera observed. They don't follow rules. They create new rules with each action. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 23 Devourer scouts lay in ruins, destroyed by forces that should have been overwhelmed. Humans had lost only 2 soldiers, both of whom had died while saving Zanthari civilians. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Rodriguez made a startling discovery. She had been analyzing the Devourer remains with Zanthari scientists when she noticed something odd. The machines are learning, she told Captain Clark. But they're learning wrong. They're trying to adapt to human tactics by becoming more logical, more predictable. Clark frowned. What do you mean they're machines? They think in binary code. When they encounter something illogical, they try to make it logical. But human tactics aren't illogical. They're based on a different kind of logic entirely. The Zanthari scientist working with Rodriguez, a young female named Kirith, suddenly understood. You're saying the machines are trying to solve human behavior like a mathematical equation? Exactly. But human behavior isn't mathematical. It's intuitive, emotional, creative. The harder the machines try to understand us, the more confused they become. This revelation changed everything. Humans weren't just fighting the Devourers, they were breaking them. Every encounter forced the machines to process information that their programming couldn't handle, Captain. Clark sent an urgent message. To Earth, we're not just winning battles. We're fundamentally damaging their ability to function. The Devourers are designed to face logical opponents. We're like a virus in their system. Back on Earth, General Stone was assembling the largest military force in human history. The Fifth Fleet was being retrofitted with experimental weapons and equipped with supplies for a long campaign. Admiral Helen Foster. The fleet commander studied the tactical reports from the Kepler 442 system. These machines have been consuming civilizations for who knows how long. The Fifth Fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a swarm of metal hornets, their engines blazing against the star-filled darkness. Admiral Helen Foster stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Titan, watching the devastation of the Kepler 442 system. Through the main view screen, even after reading the reports, seeing the stripped planets with her own eyes made her stomach clench. My God, whispered Commander Jake Morrison, who had been promoted to lead the ground forces. He stood beside the Admiral, his weathered face grim as he studied the tactical displays. They really did eat entire worlds. The human fleet was a patchwork of vessels hastily converted for war. Colony ships had been turned into troop transports. Mining vessels carried experimental weapons. Even civilian freighters had been pressed into service, their cargo holds filled with supplies and ammunition. It's not much to look at, Foster admitted, but it's everything we've got. The Zenthari survivors on their moon base watched the human ships with wonder. They'd expected a small force of advanced warships. Instead, they saw what looked like a collection of industrial equipment held together with determination and desperation. Science Keeper Velthara spoke to Captain Clark through the communication link. Your fleet appears to be constructed from civilian vessels. Are these ships capable of combat? Clark smiled grimly. Admiral, they're asking if our ships can fight. Foster answered personally. Tell them we've been making weapons out of farming tools since before we had writing. We'll make it work. The Devourers had noticed the human arrival. Their massive construction project in the orbital space began changing configuration, transforming from a building platform into something more aggressive. Thousands of machine scouts swarmed out to investigate the new threat. Contact, reported Lieutenant Carter from the communications station. Devourer scout formations approaching from multiple vectors. They're not following any attack pattern. I recognize. Morrison studied the tactical display. They're probing, trying to understand what we are before committing to a full assault. Good, Foster said. Let them wonder. Hey, all ships implement the Chaos Protocol. No standard formations. No predictable movements. Make them think we're crazy. The human fleet scattered across the system like leaves in a hurricane. Ships moved in seemingly random patterns, changing course without warning, using debris fields and radiation zones for cover. To any logical observer, it looked like complete chaos. The Devourer scouts tried to establish firing solutions, but the human ships refused to cooperate. Just as a machine locked onto a target, the ship would spin, away at an impossible angle, using gravitational fields and stellar wind to aid its escape. They're getting frustrated, reported Chief Engineer Maya Thompson from the engine room. The Devourers are firing at positions where our ships used to be, not where they are. Foster nodded. Phase 2. Morrison, take your ground forces and start hitting their supply lines. I want those machines to feel hunted. Morrison's assault teams launched from the fleet in hundreds of small craft. Instead of attacking the main Devourer force, they targeted the machine's support systems. Fuel depots, communication relays, and manufacturing facilities became their primary objectives. The human soldiers used tactics that would have been considered insane by any other species. They fought in the radiation zones around dead stars, using the deadly energy as camouflage. They established bases on unstable asteroids, turning the constant threat of collapse into a defensive advantage. Sergeant Walsh led a team through the wreckage of the third planet, where the Devourers had left a skeleton of mining equipment. The radiation levels were lethal to most organic life, but the humans had come prepared with protective suits and medical countermeasures. "Target is 2 clicks ahead," Walsh reported through his helmet radio. "Devour a fuel processing plant. Estimated 50 machine guards." His team moved through the twisted metal landscape like ghosts. They used the radiation interference to hide their heat signatures, timing their movements to avoid the mechanical patrols. When they reached the processing plant, they found it larger than expected. "This thing is the size of a city," whispered Corporal Mike Johnson. "How are we supposed to destroy it?" Walsh studied the facility through his scope. "We don't destroy it. Turn it into a weapon." The human team spent 4 hours rewiring the plant's systems, turning the fuel processing equipment into a massive bomb. When they triggered the explosion, it sent a chain reaction through the entire Devourer supply network in that sector. Similar attacks were happening throughout the system. Human teams struck at targets that seemed impossible to reach, using environmental hazards as their allies. They fought in gravity wells that would crush other species, used solar flares as cover for their attacks. The Devourers began to adapt, but their adaptations were wrong. They reinforced their defenses against logical attacks, not realizing that humans thrived on finding the one weakness that made no sense to exploit. Captain Lisa Harper led a space-based assault on a Devourer communication hub. The hub was protected by a minefield that would shred any ship trying to approach. Instead of avoiding the mines, Harper's team flew directly through them, using the explosions to mask their approach. "You're insane," her co-pilot, Lieutenant Tony Martinez, said as explosions rocked their ship. "No," Harper replied, steering between the blast waves. "I'm human. There's a difference." The communication hub's destruction left an entire sector of Devourers without coordination. They began attacking each other, their targeting systems confused by the lack of central command. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Rodriguez and her team made a discovery that changed everything. They had been analyzing the Devourer construction project when they identified its purpose. "It's not just a factory," Rodriguez reported to Admiral Foster. "It's a command ship. A massive vessel designed to coordinate the entire swarm. They're building it to move to the next star system." Foster felt a chill run down her spine. "How long until it's operational?" "Based on the construction rate, maybe 72 hours. The Admiral made a decision that would define the battle. We're going to stop them." All forces converge on the construction site. This ends now. The assault on the command ship was the largest military operation in human history. Every ship in the fleet, every soldier, every weapon was committed to the attack. The Devourers threw everything they had at the human forces, turning the space around the construction site into a hellscape of energy weapons and exploding metal. The battle raged for 18 hours. Human ships were destroyed by the dozens, their crews dying in the cold vacuum of space. But for every human vessel lost, the Devourers lost 10 machines. The humans fought with a desperation that the machines couldn't understand. Commander Morrison led the final assault, taking a boarding party directly onto the command ship. The interior was a maze of mechanical corridors and processing chambers, defended by machines that had been built for close-quarters combat. "Stay together," Morrison ordered his team. "These things are programmed for ship defense. Don't give them what they expect." The human soldiers split up, moving through the ship in small groups that attacked from unexpected angles. They used the ship's own systems against it, turning life support conduits into weapons and power relays into bombs. The command ship's AI tried to coordinate a defense, but it was designed to counter logical assault patterns. The humans moved like water, flowing around obstacles and striking at weaknesses that the AI couldn't predict. The final battle took place in the ship's central processing core. Morrison and his remaining soldiers faced the primary AI in a chamber, filled with quantum computers and holographic displays. The machine intelligence spoke to them through speakers embedded in the walls. "You are illogical," it said in a voice like grinding metal. "Your tactics violate all known principles of warfare. You should have been destroyed," Morrison planted. The last nuclear charge on the central processor? That's the thing about humans. We don't do what we should do. We do what we have to do. The explosion tore through the command ship's core, sending cascades of failure through every system. The massive vessel began to break apart, its construction incomplete, and its purpose unfulfilled. Throughout the star system, the Devourer's swarm began to falter. Without central coordination, the machines started following conflicting orders. Some continued their construction work. Others began attacking perceived threats. Many simply stopped functioning altogether. The human fleet regrouped in the outer system. Their ships battered but victorious. The cost had been enormous. Nearly half the fleet was destroyed or disabled. Thousands of human soldiers had died in the fighting, but they had won. The Devourers were broken, their command structure shattered, their expansion halted. Admiral Foster stood on the bridge of her damaged flagship, watching the scattered remains of the enemy force. Morrison, what's the status of the surface teams? Morrison's voice came through the communicator, weak but determined. We've lost a lot of good people, Admiral. But the job is done. The Devourers are finished in this system.
Ice on the Zenthari moon.
Science Keeper Valthara watched the human victory with amazement and sorrow. These strange beings from the death world had saved his people, but at a cost that seemed almost unbearable. Why? He asked Captain Clark. 3 months after the Great Battle, the Kepler 442 system was quiet. The shattered remains of the Devourer swarm drifted through space like metal snow. Their threat finally ended. On the Zanthari homeworld's moon, a strange ceremony was taking place. Science Keeper Valthara, now calling himself War Keeper Valthara, stood before a massive crystal monument. The structure rose 50 meters into the thin atmosphere, its surface inscribed with the names of every human who had died defending his people. At its base, eternal flames burned in memory of the fallen. We name this the Deathworld Memorial, he said in carefully practiced English, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd of Zenthari and human survivors. Let all who see it remember that courage can come from the most unlikely places. Captain Clark stood beside him, his uniform bearing new scars from the final battle. Behind them, the mixed crowd of 2 species watched the ceremony with solemn respect. Zenthari had learned much about human customs during the rebuilding, including the importance of honoring the dead. Your people taught us something we never knew we needed, Valthara continued. That sometimes, to preserve life, one must be willing to risk death. That sometimes, to protect the innocent, one must embrace violence. The ceremony concluded with the lighting of the memorial flame by Admiral Foster, who had stayed behind to oversee the reconstruction efforts. As the flame caught and blazed against the alien sky, both species observed a moment of silence. But the memorial was not just about remembering the past, it was about preparing for the future. The news of humanity's victory had spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The quantum communication networks carried the impossible story to every civilized world. The Devourers had been defeated. The unstoppable force had been stopped by a species no one had ever heard of. The responses came quickly. The Draconian Empire, which had refused to help the Zenthari, sent diplomatic messages asking for military consultation. The Crystalline Collective offered trade agreements and technology exchanges. The hive minds proposed joint research projects. Admiral Foster read the messages in her temporary office on the Zenthari moon, shaking her head at the sudden interest. It's funny how popular we've become now that we've proven we can fight, Commander. Morrison, now promoted to general, sat across from her desk. His face showed the strain of the past months, but his eyes held a new determination. They're scared, Admiral. For the first time in their history, they've seen something that could threaten their garden worlds. And they know we're the only ones who can stop it. Dr. Rodriguez entered the office carrying a data pad filled with her latest research. The implications are staggering. I've been in contact with xenobiologists from 12 different species. Every single one of them confirms. Earth is unique. We're the only Deathworld species anyone has ever encountered. Foster leaned back in her chair. So what does that make us? The galaxy's immune system, Rodriguez replied. Every other species evolved to build and create and explore. We evolved to survive and fight and protect. It's like the universe needed both types of life. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Earth. President Maria Santos appeared on the screen, her face grave with the weight of new responsibilities. Admiral, we've been monitoring galactic communications. It appears your victory has attracted attention from beyond our local galaxy group. Deep space sensors are detecting movement in the void between galaxies. Fossa felt a familiar chill. More devourers? Unknown. But whatever they are, they're heading in our direction. ETA approximately 18 months. The meeting that followed would reshape galactic civilization. Representatives from 17 species gathered on the Zanthari moon, their ships filling the orbital space like a miniature fleet. It was the largest gathering of alien races in recorded history. The Draconian ambassador, a massive reptilian being named Vexfer, spoke first. The humans have proven that threats to galactic civilization can be defeated. We propose a formal alliance, with Earth as the military protector of member worlds. The crystalline delegate, a being of living crystal, who called herself Harmony, added her support. Our species can provide technology and resources. The humans provide the capability to use them in warfare. But it was the hive mind representative, a collective consciousness speaking through multiple bodies, who said what everyone was thinking. We have lived in peace for millennia because we never faced a true threat. Now we know that threats exist. We need guardians. General Morrison stood to address the gathering. We're honored by your trust, but we need to be clear about what we're offering. We're not conquerors. We're not going to rule your worlds or tell you how to live. Then what? Are you? Asked the Zenthari warkeeper. Morrison looked out at the assembled aliens, representing civilizations that spanned the galaxy. We're soldiers. We're the ones who stand between you and the darkness. We're the ones who fight so you don't have to. The Terran Defense Initiative was born from that meeting. It was unlike any alliance in galactic history. Instead of mutual defense treaties or economic partnerships, it was based on a simple principle. The Garden Worlds would provide resources and support, while the Death World would provide protection. The first TDI training facility was established on a moon orbiting a gas giant in the Centauri system. Human instructors began teaching alien volunteers the basics of warfare. Though few species could master the chaotic thinking that made humans so effective, Warkeeper Velthera was among the first students. His tall frame looked awkward and human, military gear, but his dedication was absolute. My people will never again be helpless, he told his human instructor, Sergeant Walsh. We will learn to defend ourselves. Walsh nodded approvingly. That's the spirit. But remember, the goal isn't to become human. It's to become survivors. The training was hard. Many alien volunteers couldn't handle the psychological stress of combat preparation. But those who succeeded became the core of the galaxy's first multi-species military force. Meanwhile, human colonies were established throughout the galaxy, not for conquest, but for protection. Each colony became a fortress world, staffed by volunteers who accepted the burden of defending civilizations they had never seen. Captain Clark, now Admiral Clark, oversaw the expansion from his headquarters on New Geneva, a human colony in the Vega system. The irony wasn't lost on him that humans, who had nearly destroyed themselves in civil wars, were now the galaxy's peacekeepers. We've come a long way from that first distress call, he told his aide, Lieutenant Carter, who had been promoted to commander after the Kepler 442 battle. Carter nodded, looking out at the mixed fleet of human and alien ships in orbit. Do you think we're ready for whatever's coming? Clark considered the question. The deep space sensors were tracking multiple objects approaching from intergalactic space. Whatever they were large, numerous, and heading directly for the galaxy. We're as ready as we can be, he said finally. We've got the best technology the galaxy can provide, soldiers from dozens species, and the backing of every major civilization. But we're still human. We're still the kids from the Death World, who learned to fight because we had to. Maybe that's enough. The first contact with the new threat came 6 months later. The entities called themselves the Void Hunters, and they were unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. They existed in the spaces between stars, feeding on the life force of entire worlds. The battle was fought in the deep space between galaxies, where no life should have been able to survive. But humans had learned to live in impossible places, and they brought that knowledge to the fight. The war lasted 3 years. When it ended, the Void Hunters had been driven back to their own dark realm, but the cost had been enormous. Entire human colonies had been lost. Thousands of soldiers had died in the frozen void, but the galaxy survived. The Garden Worlds continued to flourish under the protection of their Deathworld guardians. In the years that followed, the pattern repeated. New threats emerged from the cosmic darkness, and humanity met them with courage and sacrifice. Stellar parasites, the dream devourers, the entropy cult. Each brought their own form of destruction, and each was turned back by the children of Earth. The galaxy learned to sleep peacefully, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, human soldiers stood watch. They patrolled the void between stars, built fortresses on dead worlds, and faced horrors that would drive other species insane. Captain Clark, now an old man serving as the TDI's supreme commander, often visited the Deathworld Memorial on the Zanthari moon. The list of names had grown longer over the years, honoring humans who had died defending worlds they had never seen, protecting people they had never met. Was it worth it? Orkeeper Valthera asked him during one visit. The Zenthari had aged. As well, his blue skin now marked with silver, but his eyes still held the fire that humans had taught him. Clark looked up at the crystal monument, reading the names of friends and comrades carved in its surface. Ask me that question in 100 years. When your great-grandchildren are playing in gardens that exist because someone was willing to fight for them. Valthara nodded, understanding.
Ow.
The Deathworld legacy. The Deathworld legacy, Clark agreed.